And welcome to the Apex Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Bob GDMD, and I'm here as always with my co-host,
Dennis V. What's going on today, Bob?
Oh, we got a good one for you today, man.
Real good one.
So we have this special guest in, nothing short of badass.
Bob, that's an understatement. When we hear what this guest does on a consistent basis to reach her apex, it is, in my words, it's unthinkable. And it's an honor to have her here today. This is great.
Yeah, unbelievable. So I've known this guest for a few years now, and I've had the opportunity to see her at her best and probably at her worst at the same time, right? I have Serra Langone from, did I get that right?
Yeah, right. Good.
Serra Langone here. She's a ultra marathoner. For those of you who don't know what ultra marathoning is, it's anything over 26.2 miles. And I witnessed her finish a 100-mile race, and I actually ran a little bit in support with her, and I did 10 miles and thought I was going to die that day, right? So without further ado, Serra.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. This is excellent.
Yeah, so we're going to talk everything about mindset today, because I think it takes a special kind of someone to be able to, A, decide to do 100 miles, right?
Yep.
And then B, to actually accomplish it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a few things, when you did that 100-miler that I was privy to, and I showed up and, ran in solidarity with a bunch of friends of ours, helping you out through that. There was one of the things that I noticed. You had been running all night, and we came in the morning, right? You had started the day before. How long did it take you to finish that race?
It took me 29 hours and about 43 minutes.
Everyone's going to have tons of questions about this. Right? Like, how do you do the bathroom? How do you sleep? Do you not sleep? Do you eat? Like, what do you do, like, during that 30 hours, right? But that takes some sort of level of commitment that's beyond the normal comprehension of anyone. Most people think, you do a half marathon or a marathon, and that's something special, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is. It is for a lot of people.
It's a different kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But there's one point in the race, or a few times during the race, where you called all your side runners off.
Yeah.
And you said, I just need to do the next few by myself. What is that all about?
So, you go during ultra marathons or any long distance thing, you go through highs and lows. And so when you're in a high, you're feeling really good. And when you get into a low, I know that sometimes I can get bitchy. And so I kind of need to be alone. I need to be there. I need to be like hurting by myself. And then I will get people back and then kind of try to pull out of that low. But sometimes you just kind of have to embrace it. You just kind of have to embrace like how terrible you're feeling. And you just want to be alone. You don't want anybody like trying to cheer you up or trying to talk to you or do anything, because you're just kind of hurting real bad at that point.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thought, right? So you're doing this thing voluntarily.
Yes.
Why does someone decide one day, you know what? Forget about a half or a full marathon. I'm going to go to 100 miles. How does one go from an average everyday weekend warrior runner into now I'm going to train for ultra? That's a whole different discipline, and I would argue it's more mental at some point.
Oh, 100%.
Physical is certainly one thing, right? And you can train and adapt to that. But if anyone's run for longer than an hour at a time, like, it starts to get mental, and you have to play games with yourself. Can you speak to how did you go from weekend warrior to 100-mile ultra racer?
It was kind of like an evolution. So, I started running, and then, you always want to see, like, what else can I do? Like, I did a half. Okay, great. All right, well, I'm going to run Boston. Let's run the marathon. So I did that, and then it was like, well, what else can I do? Like, I've kind of, like, been there, done that. So, like, let's do the next thing. And then I did some 50Ks, and I always said, like, I'd never do a 100-miler. Like, I like to, like, finish a 50K and drink a beer and, like, eat a burger and stuff like that. So, but then, COVID hit. There was really nothing to do. The gyms were closed, but the trails were open. So you could go run all day. So then, progressively over a couple years, I got some 50-milers in, and then I got a 70-miler in. And then it was kind of, the next logical step, I guess, in the ultra world is like, let's try a 100-miler. Like, let's see if we can do this. Because it is kind of like, once you get into the ultra, I argue that like road marathoning and ultra running, like trail running, are two different sports. There's two different types of people that do them. There's two different ways to train and do it. And so once you kind of get on the trails, you just, you meet like-minded people. There's not a ton of us, but there's some. And you just try to keep pushing. And for me, it's like, well, let's see if I can do it. Like, let's see if I'm going to fail at this, or like, let's see if I can actually like pull out 100 miles, like I work full time. I have 2 kids. So like, I kind of run on the side, or I get up really early and run. But it definitely becomes a mental game. So, I mean, you can, training for a 100-miler, you're not going and running 75 miles. You train for a marathon, you're probably going to peak around an 18
to
20
19,
mile.
yeah.
Yeah. And then like the rest of it's like adrenaline and mindset. You're not going to go run a marathon to train for a marathon. And that's absolutely true for ultras. You're not going to go run 75 miles to train for a 100-miler. You're going to kill your body, and it's actually just not needed.
So what's the progression? So when you're training for an ultra, like over 50 miles, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Usually a couple weeks out from the race, you're going to do your last long run.
Yeah.
Right. What does that long run look like for a 100-miler?
A lot of times when you get into the longer distances, it's back-to-back long runs on Saturday, Sunday, or like 2 days in a row. So you might hit a 20-miler on Saturday and a 20-miler on Sunday.
So just short of a marathon 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty badass in itself.
Absolutely.
Because what you want to do is you want to run on tired legs, so that when you get to 50, 60 miles and your legs are tired, your mind is saying, I felt like this before. I know I can do this. Nothing's wrong. Like, it doesn't feel good, but
Yeah.
nothing is technically wrong. So it's about running at a pace where your heart rate is low enough so you can sustain, and then hitting those back-to-back long runs so that your legs are fatigued and your body has felt that way, and your mind knows that everything's okay. I'm not, in danger or anything. Because a lot of times when we feel pain or when we feel uncomfortable, we immediately go to something's wrong. Like,
Yeah,
something's wrong, I got to fix it.
Yeah, that's that governor that David Goggins talks about.
Yeah.
Being-
Yep. And you gotta push through it, knowing like nothing's wrong. Like, this is how you're supposed to feel because you've been running for 24 hours. Like,
What's interesting is, and I'm just, this isn't my world, but it's really interesting. First of all, you're not running on flat surfaces.
no.
Trails, you can get anything. Mm-hmm. But then the other side, it sounds like when you do your last run to prepare for the marathon, the big one, it's about 65 to 70% of what you're going to be running.
Yeah.
Then when you're preparing for the 100-miler, you're doing 40%.
Oh yeah.
So that's a significant jump. How? And I know you're talking mindset, but the mindset to go 60 additional miles and to add 23 to 24 additional hours to that, that's beyond mindset.
Yeah, I mean, you have to physically train, obviously, for an ultra. Like, there's a level of, like, physical fitness you have to be in. But honestly, it's more mindset and knowing that when you hit those lows, you're gonna come out of that low at some point. And so you just kind of sit there and you kind of, like, embrace the pain and you embrace how bad you feel, because then you're gonna hit another high. Like I hit an awesome high at mile 84 of the 100-miler. And
I think I was there for
yeah,
that.
you
The
guys
last-
were
yeah,
there,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like crushing it. I started like going faster, running more.
Yeah, we were. I was pacing you at 13s when we first got there,
Yep.
and then you got up to like 10s.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
we totally
I can't
dropped
keep up
it.
with her.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
My friend, when you guys showed up, Brendan had run through most of the night with me, and he's like, "Thank God." He's like, "You were gonna drop me. Like, I just couldn't keep up with you at that point."
Yeah.
But yeah, it hit a great high at 84, and then you saw when I like kind of kicked you guys all out and was like, "Go back to the pit area." I was in a real bad low for a little bit, and then you kind of come out of it. But it's all knowing like what is going on, like what's going on within your body, what's going on in your mind, and knowing like it hurts right now, but if I don't finish this, for me, that's going to hurt way worse. Because
Yeah.
then I'm going to have to think about that
Right.
until I can get my butt
Right.
signed up for another one.
right.
Well, a lot of things we talk about is overcoming obstacles. And there's obstacles, in training, there's obstacles in life. But I'm thinking the amount of obstacles that can happen in 29 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any obstacles that have ever happened within the marathon where you're like, I'm done? And you have to really fight to overcome that? Because I would have to imagine there would, first of all, it doesn't seem like quit's in your vocabulary.
Yeah.
But does it ever start working, those obstacles just challenge you that much throughout the race?
Oh, absolutely. Anything and everything can go wrong during a 100-miler. Like, that's a ton of time. You train and you have the shoes that you've broken in and you have the socks that you like and all that stuff. But like, you can get blisters when you've never gotten blisters before. I'll tell you that we had timing chips that were on our ankles. And by mile 64, the way it had rubbed against like my sock and stuff, I ended up with like some blistering on my ankles and kind of down to my heel. And I honestly never get blisters. So like, that was something Brendan and I had to problem solve at 3:30 a.m. was, take my shoe off, take my sock off. All right, we're going to put moleskin here, put it back on. Nope, that doesn't feel right. And like redoing it and knowing like this, it's not going to hurt like this because we're going to treat it. We're going to fix it. And then you can keep going. And then, at one point when I was in a low, I started trying to do math, and like, after a certain amount of miles, you just shouldn't do math.
I remember you were asking about, is this right? And then I would like look back at my watch and I'd be like, well, okay, and then I would say, yeah, you're pretty close, but it's going to be this. Right?
Yeah.
So I tried really hard to not say, no, you're not right,
Yeah. Because, at one point I was just reeling in my head, like, do I have enough time to actually finish this? Or am I going to like be in pain and still not finish it? And, Brendan just grabbed me from the car and just put me down and said, you're just going to walk. And we just like, he just moved and I just followed him like, like a little puppy dog. Because at that point it was 3:30. I was 64 miles in. It didn't feel great, but yeah, trying to figure out like, if you have enough time, but then you never know. Cause we walked, some of the miles were like 25-minute miles because, I was like death marching it. And then other times I'm at mile 90 and I'm dropping tens. Like you don't know. Like once you hit that high, you just have to ride it out because another low is coming. And I think knowing that you're gonna have a low and knowing how that feels because you've hit them in training is super important for a 100-miler.
Now, in that 29 plus or minus, do you actually go lie down and take a nap?
I slept for 15 minutes in the back of Brendan's Highlander. He had put the seats down and he put like some blankets and stuff. And so when I came across at like 3:15 in the morning, I said things aren't going great. I think I got to lay down. And he's like, all right, 15 minutes. And he got me in the car, covered up the blankets. I swear to God, he only gave me like 7 minutes, but like in 15 minutes, he just opened up the back of the car. I was like, we got to fix my foot. We fixed my foot. And I was like, I don't know that I have time. I'm trying to figure this out. And he just like grabbed me, put me down and was like, we're just going to go. And like, we just started going again.
Yeah.
And he took me until the morning till you guys showed up.
He must have put in a good 20 miles easy.
Oh.
30, 40, something like that.
Yeah. He went from about 3:30 till you guys showed up. He was, And then he went and slept in the car.
Right.
He was so tired.
How important is that support system to get through the race?
I don't know how people can do it without. It would be extremely, extremely hard. And, a lot of times in ultras, the aid stations are amazing if you have them. People are volunteering their time. They're out there in the middle of the night and, you can sit down and they're like, what do you need? You're like, I need broth or I need ramen or I need batteries in my headlamp. And like, they'll like, it's kind of like, like a NASCAR pit. They'll just like do everything to like get you back out. And then, pacers, honestly, I don't know that I would have been able to finish in the 30 hours if I hadn't had people come down and various people too, to switch things up because your conversations change depending on who you're running with. But I don't know of anybody who's like really successful if they don't have that level of support.
There's so much to unpack with an endeavor of a 100-mile race, right?
Yeah.
So we could even talk about, my significant other, Sarah. She's done a 50-miler, and she's got her eyes set on 100 at some point. And I think now she's training for triathlon, for Ironman. But I can tell you that whenever she gets to about mile 25, her electrolytes get all wonky.
Oh, yeah.
And she gets wonky.
Yeah,
so, like,
I've done a 50K with her.
Yeah.
It's like mile 22. I'm like, what is going on?
Right. So how much do you have to pay attention to your electrolyte balance and hydration and nutrition during that whole thing? Like, it's a lot. It's actually, and I don't think the average person really understands what the human body's capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what the human mind and spirit is capable of doing, and what it takes to actually do that. And I think the nutrition support is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't tell anybody to kind of like go with my nutritional plan for a 100-miler. My body, I actually find runs better on almost on empty. So a lot of times my long runs, I won't eat before I go on a long run. I'll fuel during it. But I fuel with a lot less than other people. And I've just found that works better for me. So about every hour, once I hit 10, 15 miles, about every hour, I'm trying to take in around 100 calories. I personally don't like to drink anything but water. I don't like the sports drinks. Those have kind of messed with my stomach. I found straight up water works the best for me. And it's hard to continually do that when you're in a low and you're hurting. And, honestly, like your brain's just not functioning the way it is, or maybe you're like hallucinating. And so having the support people there is great for running with you, but also to tell you to eat. Like, you got to take in calories. I haven't seen you take in calories. And, a lot of times your stomach can kind of go south at times. And then you're trying to figure out what can I get in me for calories because I have another 40 miles, but like I just don't feel good right now. And that's like very specific. There's aid stations and there's like your general things at aid stations. So you're going to have like your gummy bears, you're going to have your chips and pretzels. A lot of times ramen's a big one, or broth to kind of settle.
I've seen baked potatoes with tons of salt on it.
Yep, potatoes and salt. I tend to stay away from a ton of sugar. What I've noticed is when I take in more sugar when I'm running ultras, that's when my stomach goes south. But if I stick with salt, pretzels, peanuts, trail mix, ramen, those are all my go-tos. I have like these like little Verb bars that are about 100 calories that have caffeine in them, because to stay awake for that long and move, you need some caffeine. But like I'm not a coffee drinker, and I don't I don't prefer the sports gels. Yeah. I love to eat, and that doesn't change during a 100-miler. I still want to eat real food. I don't want, a powder or a gel or something like that.
You work full time. This isn't your full time profession.
No.
So I think about the recovery afterwards. Mm-hmm. It's not like you can take 2-3 months off, let the body heal, and do whatever. You have to get back to work. You have to get life going. What's your recovery process like, and how does that play in with mindset?
So it was funny because I finished. Well, it was Sunday around noon. I think I finished the 100-miler. I was at work on Monday. But
it's crazy. Come on. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that day, I got home. My neighbor actually had made me a giant like bacon, egg, and cheese breakfast sandwich, and he came over with that. I ate that, napped, and then that night started just refueling again. Tons and tons of water. That's kind of the biggest thing because you get really, really dehydrated. I actually did an Epsom salt bath, and that thing was amazing. So, the next day, my kids always judge by, like, how mom's doing is if I have to walk backwards down the stairs because my quads are trashed. Yeah. But if I can walk forward down the stairs, then they're like, oh, it's not too bad. And I was able to walk forward down the stairs within a day, which was great. Yep.
That's absolutely amazing. I've put a lot of time in the gym over the past 4 or 5 years, and I've had some very crippling leg workouts that I am just wishing I hadn't done what I did, but so it's just amazing to me that you're able to recover in that way.
Especially when you're always pushing your body beyond those limits.
But it's just a testament to the fact that you're training properly, you're doing progression properly, you're probably getting fair enough sleep. Yep. And you're also, paying attention to the nutrition part, which I think is way big. Like, and the fact that you know what you need to be dialed in is just such an awesome tool. Yeah. Right. One of the things I always ask people is why. What's your compelling reason why? To be able to go out and do something that is going to hurt time after time, there's got to be some reason why you do it. And usually motivation is fleeting, as we know. Yep. Right? So it's like a flash in the pan, and you need to have that slow ember constantly going that gives you a reason to go do it, right? So why do you do what you, I know we're going to talk a little bit about your other side hustle and your daytime job, but I really want to understand the mindset of someone who says, you know what, I think for me, my apex is going to run a 100-mile race. And who knows, maybe you're going to be at Badwater or something. You know, for those of you who don't know what Badwater 135 is, it's a run through Death Valley in the middle of the 135-mile run through the middle of Death Valley in the summertime.
In the hottest part.
And I think you have like 10,000 feet of elevation change during that race as well. So and it's at the end. Like all the elevation is at the end.
You gotta go up.
So that's probably that and Leadville. Those are the two big, Mac Daddy ultra runs, and you have to be invited to both of them, I believe. But so I don't know if any of that's on the horizon for you at some point, maybe. But what is your compelling reason why? Why do you do it?
I mean, honestly, just to see if I can. I signed up for the 100-miler because I was like, I don't know, like I might fail, and like, I don't think failure is a bad thing in life. I think sometimes you have to push your limits, because I can go run a half marathon, that's fine, but that's nice and safe. And the 100-miler was it kind of excites me and scares me, and like I think that's just a great combo. Because, a couple, weeks before the 100 that I finished, I actually was in Virginia running a 100-miler and got pulled off the course when we were at the top of a mountain, and Hurricane Ian came in, and it was like 30 degrees and hailing, and, we're in Virginia, so we're all in shorts and not appropriately dressed, and we ended up timing out, and so we got pulled from the course. So, I ran 100K that day. And so that kind of lit a fire under me. And so when I got back, I was looking around for 100-milers in the fall, and a bunch of them had already passed, and I found this one, and it was 3 weeks out. And so I'm not sure I'd recommend doing 100K and 3 weeks later doing a 100-miler, but like that was the situation I was in. And I knew from my mindset I had to finish a 100-miler, or else I would be like reeling about it until the following year when I could get the opportunity to do it again.
Wow. Powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
You just have such passion for what you're doing. You're persistent, and you seem very goal oriented.
Yes, and running also is. I have 2 kids. My work, I'm around people all the time. Running is mine. Running, I can be alone. Running, I can. It definitely kind of, you get that runner's high, but it chills me out, so I can kind of conquer my day. So I love getting up at 4:30 in the morning, it being nice and dark, and just going and hitting a nice long run before work. I prefer to run through the night. A friend of mine was doing the same 100-miler that I had done this past fall, and she said, "Do you want to come pace me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to show up at 10 p.m. I'm going to run through the night with you." And so I showed up at 10 p.m. and I did 26 miles with her, and then I passed her off to the next person. But that's my preference, because it's quiet, and it's my time. I don't have anybody asking me for anything. I don't have anything to do, and it helps to clear my mind and kind of to like calm me down. If during taper, that's real hard. Like a couple weeks out before a race, when you got to kind of slow down, and you're just, you're supposed to eat and rest and stretch and do all this stuff. Like that's really hard for me. Like I don't idle well.
Yeah. One of the things that I do is I work on the 75 Hard program quite a bit. And I just finished one up in December. I think it was December I finished one up. And one of my favorite parts is waking up at 4:30 and having it be quiet. And if it's snowing out or like really bad weather, that's one of the tenets of the 75 Hard program. Yeah. Is you got to do 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside no matter the weather. Yep. And I love it when I'm out there at 4:30. It's terrible weather, and I got all my blinkers on and all this stuff, so I don't get hit by a car. And the one car comes through, and I keep thinking to myself, "What is that guy thinking in his head? Seeing this crazy guy out here with a ruck on, the 50-pound ruck? What's he think he's training for? The military or something?" Yeah. But it gives me a feeling of calm to start my day, and it also gives me that feeling of like badassery a little bit.
It's like a sense of accomplishment, and if it's bad weather, it's like even better. Like you hit a 5-mile or 10-mile run, fine, but if it's raining or snowing, like that run is just way more badass. Like it was funny, a couple years ago, it was snowing, and I had made a list of like a whole 40 things I wanted to do throughout the year, and one was run in like extreme cold, one was run when it was snowing. So it was snowing. I was like, great. So I got up and I ran, and I'm running down the street, and I get pulled over by the Burlington police. I'm running. And all of a sudden, like I can see kind of somebody creeping up, and the lights go on. And he's like, "You're just out for a run?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, it's like a blizzard. I was like, "Yeah, no, this is like I'm good. We're fine." And he's like, "You got to get on the sidewalk." And I was like, "Well, I haven't plowed the sidewalks yet, but like there's still some snow on the street, but it's better." He's like, "Yeah, you're gonna need to get on the sidewalk." He's like, "Or I can drive you home." And I was like, no, I'll get on the sidewalk. That's fine.
That's
and
awesome.
I finished my like 8 miles or something like that. But man, I think he was doing a wellness check. He's like, "What the heck is this?"
Exactly right.
What's this? Where'd she escape from?
Yeah.
Where's she going?
Right. That's crazy. So that being said, let's talk about winter. So one of your side hustles is you're a guide up in the White Mountains.
Yeah. My friend opened Guinea Fowl Adventure Company, and so we guide hikes all throughout the year up in the White Mountains, and we try to get people who maybe have never hiked before, don't have all the gear, they're a little nervous, they don't know the trails, and we get them, we drive them up. We have a Mercedes Sprinter van, we drive them up, we give them all the gear that they need, snowshoes, poles, packs, food, water, all that stuff, and we go on a nice hike, and then they hop back in, and we drive them back to the Boston area or wherever they're from.
That's fantastic.
That's really cool.
So
Yeah.
on your Instagram page, I see pictures of you up in the White Mountains in the middle of blizzards and stuff like that. It's like pretty cool. It's very, very cool.
I love winter hiking. People knock it, but I'll tell you, actually, winter hiking in
It's
New
almost
Hampshire.
easier.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say it's way
almost
easier.
easier, yeah.
You don't have the rocks and the roots and stuff like
Right.
that. Like you just have a blanket of snow. You
And
put
you're just
on
right on top of it.
Yep,
Yeah.
microspikes or snowshoes or something, and you go up. And if you have the right gear, you're perfectly warm. It's not a problem. And we take, we have a lot of youth programming, so we take a lot of kids like from schools, and we do a lot of like corporate outings, stuff like that. And then, just the kind of like, hey, we're on vacation here. There's 4 of us, and we want to go hiking in the Whites, but we've never hiked before. We've never been here before. And so it's really fun. It's really cool to get somebody up to the top of peak and have them like look out.
The scenery.
You know what would be awesome is if we could get get the crew over here at the Apex crew, and maybe have Guinea Fowl take us up to one of the hikes over 4,000. That'd be fantastic.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That would go right down the road of what we've been doing. you know?
100%.
So that's pretty cool.
Pierce is an awesome like first 4K'er.
Yeah.
When people are looking at him, there's 48 4K'ers up there. But Pierce is a really nice like out and back 6 miler. But
I love Eisenhower actually.
Oh yeah, Eisenhower's
That's my favorite actually. Right
So-
up the Edmonds path, and most people, it's not that technical.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So it's a slog.
Yep.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you see you're in the presidential, so you see them all up there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
So that's very cool. In the backdrop of all of this, you have a day job.
I do.
Yeah, and it's a pretty significant one from that. So packed in this small package that we see in front of us here,
Yep.
guys. Sarah's badass in all of the things that she does. You want to talk about your day job a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for a company called the May Center, and I'm a clinical director at a school for kids with head injuries. So it's a private nonprofit. When kids, have head injuries for various reasons, they need, additional support. They might need residential support. We actually have 4 houses that our kids can live in. Then, they come to us, and there's a lot of things that tie into a head injury. There's a lot of rehab. There's a lot of relearning. And then, my job basically focuses on the challenging behavior that sometimes comes after a brain injury because of either lack of understanding or lack of communication, or just in general, like being ticked off that they were typical and now they're not. So I do that full time. It is a res program. So, when I go home, the kids are still usually at the group home. So it doesn't mean that I don't get a call, or don't need to check in on things. But yeah, I would say all around my life, I have somewhat of an intense personality. So, my profession is intense. My hobbies are intense. That's the way I prefer it.
I don't know if the viewers can feel it, but there is a special kind of passion going on in this room right now. I can feel coming right off of Sarah.
I was thinking the same thing, and we were talking before. I've been in education for 30 years, and same wheelhouse. you seem to love the unexpected challenges and obstacles. And I know with that population, you don't know from 1 second to the next, because they're exploring a new life when they come to you. Talk about that and how that almost relates to the unexpected when you're in the middle of the night running 100 miles.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thrive off of that. So, you have your day, and my day, there might be certain meetings, or I might have a plan, and that plan could go completely awry if somebody has a huge challenging behavior, if we have like a huge medical thing happening, and I kind of like thrive in that crisis mode. At work, people will say like, you don't get ruffled, and I was like, no, it doesn't help to get ruffled. You're just calm, cool, collected. You're given directives. You're doing that, and you solve it, and your adrenaline's up, but you kind of keep cool. And it's in 100-miler, your adrenaline's pumping, and you feel like trash sometimes, and you just have to like rein it all in and keep going, because it's going to be better on the other side. And even though sometimes are pretty intense at work, at the end of the day, we're doing these kids a really good service, and their life is going to be better because of it. And that's huge, and that's like what the take home is.
And you can't take it personal, the challenges. I mean, I can imagine a lot comes at you, and you just have to really have thick skin that you've developed throughout the years, and in just helping them reach their goals. And how great does that feel when you see them reach, especially individuals with brain injuries? They have multiple goals along the way. Sometimes it's just to be able to communicate again. It's to be able to do. How is it along the way seeing them reach their goals? Because you're very goal-oriented.
Yep.
What does it feel like seeing someone else do it?
There's like some real proud moments. So when, somebody comes to us in a wheelchair, and in 6 months you see them walking in a walker. Or somebody was residential and was extremely aggressive, but he actually just passed all the Massachusetts MCAS and is going to graduate with like a real high school diploma in the spring. Those things are huge, and that's what, even on the really, really tough days, that's what we have to just remember. Or, the kids who were kicked out of all of these different schools, or going to the hospital a lot because people thought they were, crazy, quote unquote, and they come to us and we set up plans for them, and then they're doing well, and now they're able to go home and visit, and now they're able to do overnights and progress to that. Those things. And with brain injury, you see the progression way quicker than with some other developmental disabilities. So you get that kind of reinforcement really quick, which is nice.
How do you, one of my favorite things working with children is finding out their unique personality. Often individuals, when they don't really develop an understanding, they look at individuals as brain injured, but they don't look at them as an individual with unique skills, a personality. How is it pulling that out of them?
I mean, our kids definitely, they're hysterical, and they are kind of their own beings. They have their preferences, their food that they like, their music that they like, their preferred staff that they like, all of that. And it's really cool to see kind of how different, not all of them want, to bounce on the ball or to have a goldfish. Like, they have their own unique wants and needs, and they'll tell you, and they'll sit with you and try to develop their plan. And then it's cool to go into the community with them, and some of them will get really quiet in the community because they might stutter or they might have a limp and stuff like that. But getting them out and doing all of the things that they love to do. We have one student who loves cars. Always looking at cars, looking through things. And, we're in Norwood, so we're right on Route 1, the auto mile, right? Well, he's made friends with some of the car dealerships, so he goes and he always gets a key. They always give him like a Mercedes key or this key, it doesn't really go to anything. But it's huge, huge for him, and it's just this nice connection with the community.
It's all about connections.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So one of the things we kind of want to get get a good understanding is we're going to go back to the ultra world, right? And right before you start an ultra, what are the emotions that go through? I can imagine you have excitement and all sorts of things going through your mind. You want to let the listener in on a little bit of what's going on in your head right before they blow that horn or pull the gun or whatever they're doing?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of excitement, anticipation, but also there's a little bit of fear there. What's going to go right? What's going to go wrong? When am I going to hit a high? When am I going to hit a low? Like, is my stomach going to go south? And it's a matter of kind of like just putting that all, like knowing like all these things can happen, but I'm going to put them in the back of my head. I've trained, I've gone through my nutrition, and I'm just going to go out and see what happens. And it's kind of exciting, that unknown. So much is known in, your adult world. You know about Christmas. You know what you're getting for gifts because you probably wrap them yourself. Yeah. But there's not a lot of unknown. And in ultras, there's a lot of unknown. And I don't like that. I wouldn't want that all the time. But in that aspect of my life, I like it, and I kind of thrive off it.
You can explore it a little bit in somewhat of a safe way.
Yeah.
I mean, not really safe, but, in somewhat of a safe way, right?
Yeah.
So it's the unthinkable path, what you're doing. What advice would you give to someone looking to do the ultra?
Looking to do it?
Because, you're a seasoned veteran in it now. You have experiences, the peaks and valleys, the highs, the lows. Mm-hmm. What would you tell them as they're getting ready to embark on their journey?
I would tell them definitely, make sure you're hitting your back-to-back long runs. Make sure that you're running on tired legs. You're running tired, or you run through the night to prepare yourself. And, I try to encourage people to do it. It's kind of a wild thing to do to your body, but like what happens to your mind throughout it is actually like pretty cool. And that sense of accomplishment after is amazing. Like it's untouched, like you kind of ride this high after for a little bit, knowing what you've accomplished, and your body's sore for a little bit. So, that counts a constant reminder.
Would you say that during an ultra of any length really, but specifically the 100-miler, would you say that you find parts of yourself that you didn't know existed sometimes? Like, I know a bunch of ultra runners, and they talk about like they find parts of themselves that they didn't really even know existed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see kind of what you're made of in how you react to things, and that's a pretty cool thing, because I don't know that everybody really gets to experience that or really takes the time to. But if you're running, and there was portions of the race I was alone, and I like that. I like kind of my alone time. And you're able to figure out kind of how resilient you are, and that can then bleed into kind of your regular life, your personal life. If you hit an obstacle with, something in a family or something like that, like you've been through hard things, so that you can do it.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So, one of the things that I talk about with a lot of the guests is confidence. Would you say that doing a 100-miler and knowing that you can do hard things, what does that do to your own personal confidence in life?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important, because, life throws crazy things at us sometimes. And I think having the confidence, running an ultra is very different than maybe a loss within your personal life. But knowing that you can push through hard things is huge. And knowing that there can be obstacles there and you can problem solve them is also pretty big.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I can tell you, I without a shadow of a doubt know that Sarah's working toward and living at her apex, quite literally.
100%.
At the apex of all those mountains up in New Hampshire, at the apex of the running world. One of the things that I want you to kind of leave us with is, if you have someone who wants to go and do an ultra, but they really is there a baseline level of fitness that you would subscribe to say that someone needs to be able to do at least this before you even try a 50 or 100-miler? Mm-hmm. Or do you think anybody can set out and just train for it and go do it?
I mean, I think honestly, humans, we were made to run. We were made to move. Like, that's kind of like our ancestry of like hunting, gathering. We were made to go long distances in order to forage for food, whether that be a couple miles or maybe, people had to go even further. So I think...
Are you referring to McDowell's book?
So, yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yep. But also I think almost anybody can do it. it then just goes into that mental drive of and the want. Like, you have to want it. You know, you can go pull out a 5K, like, fine, that's only gonna take you 30 minutes or so. But to run for an entire day, you have to have the want, and then the mindset, because after a certain amount of movement, like, your body is just kind of numb, and it all goes into that mental aspect of pushing yourself and getting to that finish line. So I think, anybody can, and everybody always tells me, they're like, no, I could never do that. It's like, well, you probably could. You just don't have the desire, and that's fine, because maybe your mindset isn't there.
Sure. Powerful interview. Incredible.
This was awesome, guys.
So let me ask you, where can people follow you? Where can they find you? Or what resources would you put out there for people to look for if they want to get into trail running, ultra running, things like that?
Yeah. I mean, around the area, TARC Trail Animals Running Club is great. They have a lot of ultras around that are pretty cheap, as far as that goes. I'm on Instagram. It's sarah.gf. That's usually where I post hiking stuff. I'm on Facebook at Serra Langone. I think if people want to break into it, the first thing to do is just go find a trail. Just move. It doesn't matter if you run the whole time. Maybe you have to hike part of it. Like, that's totally fine. In ultras, the greatest thing about ultras is you don't have to run the whole time. Sometimes you're hiking, or sometimes you have to change your gait or something like that. And it's very individualized. So, the 100-miler that I finished, I was the first female to finish. I was also the last female to finish, and I was the second person to finish. So it was like I was second, and I was last, and I was first, and I was last. Like, because only two of us, finished it.
Did that young kid actually make the cutoff? The young kid with his buddies?
Only one of them did.
Only one of them did.
Yeah, one of them did. The others were sleeping on the side of the trail at one point when we saw them.
Just to give you guys a clue, these were guys in their early mid-20s.
Oh yeah,
like and they were buff as all get out, right? They looked like they came off the cover of a fitness magazine or something. Yeah. And Sarah just ate for lunch.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I think he was maybe 10 or so minutes before me, and he was laying on the ground when I finished, and I went over and I was like, you did awesome, but you have extreme youth on your side.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm so much older than you.
Right.
But yeah, only, it was a 30-hour time frame, so people could do 100 or they could do 50 and be done, or they could do a couple of laps.